In the histories of English kings, Harold Harefoot is often an elusive figure, often overlooked by the legacies of his forebears and successors. His short reign is obscured by the grandeur of his father Canute the Great, and the might of his grandfather Sweyn Forkbeard, and the enduring fame of the kings who followed, such as Edward the Confessor. Thus, Harold's tale, entwined with both ambition and infamy, is seldom recounted in the sagas of old. Yet, in the pages of Matthew Paris's Chronicle, the life of King Edward the Confessor, Harold Harefoot emerges, not as a hero, but as a figure cloaked in tyranny. He is depicted as a ruthless usurper, murdering a rival to the throne. In those turbulent days of the 11th century, the fate of crowns in northern Europe were forged by the sword rather than by birthright. Such was the tumultuous path that led Harold Harefoot to power, a path fraught with strife and controversy. His name is blackened in the writings of his enemies, particularly in Emma's Iconium, where he is branded a tyrant, a portrayal by those loyal to his stepmother, Emma of Normandy, who harboured her own ambitions for the throne. Even the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recounts his reign with cold disdain, stating, "He did nothing royal during his whole reign," further tarnishing his already sullied legacy. To some, Harold Harefoot was nothing more than a usurper, but the lords of England bent the knee to him, acknowledging his might if not his right. This is his story. I would like to thank World of Warships Legends for sponsoring today's video. Embark on an epic naval adventure in a world of Warship Legends with the ultimate free-to-play console experience. Command legendary warships and forge your legacy on the high seas. With over 8 million players already battling across 20 plus maps and with 400 vessels, now it is time to join their ranks. Annihilate your enemies with an armada of powerful ships, whether you're on PlayStation or Xbox. Celebrate our 5th anniversary with thrilling new content and rewards. Even newcomers can quickly rise to become formidable commanders. Make sure to click the link in the description to get all of these amazing perks. Unlock unique rewards in the Aegean Arrow campaign and other epic events. Harness the power of Divine Commander guises featuring Athena, Poseidon and Zeus. If you are new to the game, claim your exclusive welcome pack, including the mighty American Tier 3 battleship Arkansas, the German cruiser Karlsruhe, 7 days of premium account status and more. Join the ranks of legends today and make history on the seas. Be sure to click the link in the description to not miss out on all the exciting new features. The early 11th century was one of the deadliest eras in English history, and Harold Harefoot was born into a world ablaze with conflict and ambition. His grandfather Sweyn Forkbeard's brutal campaign to seize the English crown would ultimately result in his birth. Sweyn, the fearsome King of Denmark, had embarked on a relentless crusade of fire and steel, ravaging the lands of England. To secure the loyalty of the powerful Northumbrians, Sweyn arranged a marriage for his son Canute to Ælfgifu of Northampton, a noblewoman of distinguished lineage. Ælfgifu was the daughter of Ælfhelm, the deceased Earl of Northumbria, a union meant to bind the northern lords to the Danish cause. This alliance, however, was not forged in the quiet halls of diplomacy, but in the midst of war, as Sweyn's forces pressed ever deeper into English territory. By the winter of the year 1013, the English lords had submitted to Sweyn's rule, recognising him as their king. However, Sweyn's triumph was short-lived. In February in the year 1014, after reigning for a mere 5 weeks, he met his end under mysterious circumstances, leaving the throne vacant and the kingdom in disarray. The sudden death of Sweyn sparked a resurgence of resistance from the English, as Ethelred the Unready, the deposed king, rallied his forces and forced Sweyn's son Canute to retreat to Denmark. In the turmoil that followed, Ælfgifu would give birth to a son named Sven, and perhaps was already heavily pregnant with another child. She would seek refuge in Denmark, and it was there in the cold lands of the north that she gave birth to Harold, later known as Harefoot. As Canute gathered his strength for a return to England, a young Harold's early years was steeped in the violent struggle for power that marked his father's ambitions. By the year 1016, Canute had launched a renewed invasion, striking at the heart of England with merciless force. The English king Ethelred, worn down by years of warfare and plagued by illness, died as Canute's forces bore down upon his kingdom. His son Edmund Ironside took up the mantle of resistance, engaging in a series of fierce and climactic battles against the invaders. Edmund's valour was legendary, yet it was not enough to stem the tide of Canute's advance. Wounded and wearied from relentless combat, Edmund's life was cut short, either by his festering wounds or by treachery, leaving Canute as the undisputed ruler of England. With the conquest of England complete, Canute's ambitions extended beyond its shores. He claimed the crowns of Denmark and Norway as well, forging an empire that spanned the cold waters of the North Sea. Amidst this vast dominion, Harold Harefoot grew up in the shadow of his father's greatness, a child of both England and Denmark, born of conquest and royal ambition. Canute's marriage to Ælfgifu, though politically advantageous, was not his only union. After securing England, Canute sought to solidify his hold on the throne by marrying Emma of Normandy, the widow of Ethelred, and a woman of considerable influence. This marriage was a strategic move, meant to secure the loyalty of the English nobility and to forge ties with the powerful Duchy of Normandy. In those days, it was not uncommon for kings to set aside one wife if the first marriage had been conducted under pagan rites, and Canute did just that, placing Ælfgifu in the background while elevating Emma to the status of queen. Thus, Harold Harefoot grew up in a divided household, where the politics of the day dictated the fates of men and kingdoms alike. He was not only the brother of Sweyn, his elder through Ælfgifu, but also to the children born of Canute's marriage with Emma, such as Harthacnut. In the court of Canute the Great, power was the ultimate currency, and the seeds of future conflicts were sown in the very bloodlines of the royal family. This was the world in which Harold Harefoot was born, a world where loyalty was as fleeting as the wind, and where the bonds of kinship could be both a blessing and a curse. The stage was set for a life defined by the pursuit of power, a pursuit that would one day lead Harold to the throne of England and into the annals of history as a king whose reign, though brief, was marked by the same turmoil that surrounded his birth. Harold Harefoot, son of the legendary Canute the Great, was destined to experience a life that few in this world could ever imagine. As the offspring of one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, Harold was raised amidst opulence and grandeur that far surpassed the wealth and luxury of both his Danish ancestors and his English predecessors. His upbringing was one of privilege and splendour, surrounded by the finest treasures of the age, from glittering jewels to richly adorned halls. He was the son of a king who ruled an empire that stretched across the seas, a realm that commanded respect and fear from every corner of northern Europe. The precise details of Harold's early life are shrouded in mystery, with little known about the lands where he spent his formative years. Yet, given the nature of his father, a king who wielded power across England, Denmark, and Norway, it is likely that Harold was a child of many courts, travelling with the royal entourage to the farthest reaches of Canute's empire. From the misty fjords of Norway to the bustling markets of London, Harold would have seen it all, learning the ways of governance, diplomacy, and warfare from his father's seasoned advisors and warriors. Every corner of the empire, whether a fortified longhall in Denmark or a castle on the English coast, was part of his father's many kingdoms. The first major event of Harold's adulthood occurred with the elevation of his elder brother Sweyn to the throne of Norway. This coronation was a momentous occasion, for it was Canut's way of solidifying his dominion over the north by placing his own blood on the throne of Norway. Sweyn, the son of Ælfgifu, Harold's mother, would be crowned king, and Harold would have likely been present to witness his brother's rise to power, though it is unclear whether Harold remained in England during this period. The likelihood of his presence in Norway is strong, for his father's empire was vast, and the bonds of kinship were vital in maintaining his control over the far-flung territories. England, however, remained Canut's power base, the heart of his empire, where his second wife Emma of Normandy held sway. Emma, a woman of formidable influence, never favoured the sons of Canut's first union, and this may have driven Harold to seek refuge in Norway alongside his full brother. If Harold did indeed travel to Norway, he would have been regarded as a prince, a figure of importance in the royal court. Harold earned the name Harefoot, an Old English term meaning fleet of foot. This epithet reflects his extraordinary swiftness, whether in running or in the deadly dance of battle, where his speed with the sword and axe would have been unmatched. Among the Vikings and Saxons, such nicknames were not mere titles, but marks of honour and prowess, echoing through the ages, long after the bearer had passed into legend. The year 1033 marked a turning point in Harold's life, when, at the age of around 17, he may have taken part in his first military campaign. According to the Heimskringla, the saga of the Norwegian kings, the Battle of Soknasund would take place when Tryggvi the Pretender, a claimant to the Norwegian throne, sought to take control of the kingdom from the Danish rulers. Tryggvi, the alleged son of Olaf Tryggvason, a legendary figure in his own right, challenged Sweyn's rule, leading to a confrontation that would determine the fate of Norway. As the Danish fleet, led by King Sweyn, and possibly accompanied by the young Prince Harold, sailed into battle, the tension would have been palpable. The island of Bokken became the stage for a bloody clash between the forces of the Pretender and the royal army. In the heat of the battle, Tryggvi demonstrated his skill as a warrior, reportedly hurling javelins with both his hands, a feat reminiscent of his father's prowess. Yet, despite his valour, Tryggvi's forces were no match for the might of the Danish fleet. Overwhelmed by the superior numbers and the strategy of the royal army, Tryggvi was slain, and his claim to the throne died with him. For Harold, this battle may have been his first taste of war, a baptism by fire that would prepare him for the tumultuous years ahead. In the same winter, the winds of rebellion began to stir in Norway once more. Many Norwegian chieftains grew discontented with the harsh taxes imposed by the Danes, and sought out Magnus, the son of the late Olaf Haraldsson, to challenge Danish rule. Magnus, young but charismatic, arrived in Norway to the acclaim of the people, who were eager to cast off the yoke of foreign domination. Faced with this uprising, Sweyn and his mother Ælfgifu were forced to flee, retreating to Denmark as the tides of fortune turned against them. Not long after, Sweyn met an untimely death, leaving Harold as the eldest surviving son of Canute the Great. He and his mother made their way to England. The land that had been the foundation of his father's power would soon become the stage for Harold's own bid for kingship. Canute would die in the year 1035. His brilliance and brutal reputation is what held his North Sea Empire together, and upon his death, it collapsed. Norway was claimed by Magnus the Good, the the son of Olaf Haraldsson, whom Canute had dethroned and had killed. Denmark went to Canute's son and heir, Harthacnut, while Harold would contend for the English throne. A grand witan was convened as Harold boldly pressed his claim to the English throne. Lords and nobles from every corner of the realm gathered, their voices and votes poised to determine the next King of England. For Emma of Normandy, the esteemed widow of Canute the Great, and Godwin, the formidable Earl of Wessex and most powerful lord in the kingdom, the succession was clear. Canute had decreed that Harthacnut, his son by Emma, would inherit both the crowns of England and Denmark. Yet fate had other plans, for Harthacnut was preoccupied in Denmark, as Magnus the Good was laying waste to his lands. This left England without a rightful king, and they were in desperate need of a strong leader. Amidst this uncertainty, Harold, driven by ambition and cunning, engaged in the delicate art of diplomacy. He sought and won the favour of powerful allies, including Leofric of Mercia, a lord of great influence. His mother, Elfgifu of Northampton, was also trying to secure her son's position, be it with bribes or promises of lands or positions. With their support, Harold continued to assert his claim to the throne, despite the formidable opposition he faced. The Witan, a scene of fierce debate, with each side presenting its case with passion and resolve. On one hand, there was those who upheld Harthacnut's right to rule, firmly believing in the late king's wishes. On the other, Harold's supporters argued for the necessity of immediate and strong leadership in these uncertain times. At last, a compromise was reached. Harold would serve as regent, guiding the kingdom in Harthacnut's absence, while Emma would retain control of Wessex, safeguarding it on behalf of her son. The agreement was fragile, a temporary peace that would hold until Harthacnut could return from Denmark to reclaim his rightful place as the King of England. In the beginning, the Kingdom of England was torn between the two half-brothers, with Harold claiming dominion over the lands north of the River Thames, where he was backed by the northern nobility. Meanwhile, the southern lords, under the influence of old Godwin and Queen Emma, remained loyal to the absent Harthacnut, ruling in his name. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recounts that Godwin and the leading men of Wessex resisted Harold's rule as long as they could, but they could do nothing against it. Bound by the terms of the agreement, the North rallied behind Harold, while Emma was confined to Winchester, surrounded by Harthacnut's loyal warriors. But Harold, driven by ambition, soon seized the treasures of his father Canute the Great, stripping Emma of her wealth and power. The fragile balance of power could not hold, and as tensions rose, Godwin found himself compelled to switch sides. William of Malmesbury records that Harold, growing in strength and numbers, overwhelmed Godwin's position. With England now owned by Harold Harefoot, Harthacnut could not even approach without securing sufficient military strength. His decision to remain in Denmark probably points to him lacking sufficient support, though he would certainly wait for an opportunity to forcefully assert his claim and depose his half-brother. One of the most remarkable events of Harold's reign was the bold arrival of Alfred and Edward, the sons of Ethelred, who set foot on English soil with a retinue of hardened Norman mercenaries. Their purpose was clear and unwavering: to seize the throne and restore the ancient House of Wessex to its rightful place of power. The true motivation behind their daring expedition remains shrouded in mystery. Were they spurred on by their mother Emma to reclaim the crown, or did they act by their own accord, driven by the blood of kings that coursed through their veins? Emma's Iconium claims the usurper devised a wicked plan with his allies, intending to kill Emma's children, so that he could secure his reign and continue living in his sins. He came up with a deceitful trick, crafting a letter as if it were from the Queen herself, addressed to her sons who were living in Normandy. The letter read, "Emma, Queen in name only, sends motherly greetings to her sons Edward and Alfred. My dear sons, as we mourn the death of our Lord the King, I am deeply concerned about your future. Each day, you are being pushed further away from your rightful kingdom. I wonder what you plan to do, knowing that your delay only strengthens the usurper's hold on the throne. He travels through towns and cities, making allies through gifts, threats, and promises. Yet the people would rather have one of you as their ruler than remain under his control. I urge one of you to come to me quickly and in secret, so that I can offer you wise counsel and explain how to reclaim your inheritance. Please send word back with the messenger about what you decide. Farewell, my beloved sons." According to Emma, this letter was a fake and a trap meant to lure the brothers into danger. Many historians hold that Harold Harefoot, in his cunning, likely had the letter forged to deceive his rivals. Yet whether this treacherous letter truly was his creation, or a genuine plea from a desperate mother, remains a mystery that has been swallowed by the shadows of time. According to the Iconium, Alfred and Edward read the letter and in their innocence believed the fabrication. They unwisely replied to their parent that one of them would come to her. William of Jumièges recounts that in the year 1036, Edward launched a daring raid on Southampton, striking swiftly and with force. He won a decisive victory against the city's defenders and returned to Normandy, his ships heavy with spoils. Yet this rapid retreat revealed a crucial truth. Edward lacked the strength and numbers needed to truly challenge Harold. His brother Alfred, however, was bolder still. With his Norman retinue, he ventured deep into England, reaching the ancient city of Winchester. But the winds of power had shifted against him, with Emma's influence waning and Godwin, the mighty Earl of Wessex, now the true power in the south. Alfred's advance was quickly intercepted. Godwin, ever the calculating figure, swore to protect the young Etheling. Yet loyalty in such turbulent times was a fleeting thing. Godwin, sensing the change in fortune, betrayed Alfred and delivered him into the hands of Harold Harefoot. Harold, with the cold resolve of a king who knew the weight of power, ordered the Norman mercenaries with Alfred to be slaughtered. Alfred himself was seized and was brought before the king. In a cruel act of retribution, Harold decreed that Alfred be sent to a monastery, only to be blinded, a punishment so severe that it led to the young prince's death. This invasion underscored Harold Harefoot's strength as the rightful son and successor of Canute. The Anglo-Danish nobility had rallied behind him, violently rejecting the claims of Alfred and Edward, and the House of Wessex. The ancient lineage of Wessex, once revered, had lost its hold on the nobility of England. This brutal episode marked a turning point, not only in Harold's consolidation of power, but also in the bitter struggle with Emma, which would ultimately drive her into exile. By the year 1037, the tide had fully turned. Emma of Normandy, sensing the danger, fled to Flanders, and Harold was proclaimed as king all across the realm. The crown, once divided, now rested solely on Harold's head, as England stood united. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle states, Harold was chosen as king over all of England, while Harthacnut was forsaken by his own people, for he lingered too long in Denmark. Once Harold was officially king, with a cold and ruthless hand, He cast out his stepmother Emma, showing no mercy, and forced her into exile in the middle of winter. The once powerful queen, now abandoned and alone, was driven from the realm she had once ruled, while her stepson claimed the throne with an iron will. Emma's Iconium paints Harold in an unfavourable light, stating, "And so it came to pass that certain Englishmen, forgetting the piety of their recently deceased king, chose to dishonour their country rather than elevate it. They turned their backs on the noble sons of Queen Emma, choosing instead as their king a man named Harold. Soon after being chosen as king, Harold, fearing for his future, summoned Archbishop Ælfnoth, a man of great courage and wisdom. Harold commanded and begged to be consecrated as king, and asked that the royal sceptre and crown, which were in the archbishop's care, be handed to him. He desired that the archbishop alone would lead him to the throne, as no other could legally do so. But the archbishop refused, swearing an oath that as long as Queen Emma's sons were alive, he would not approve or consecrate any other man as king. King Canute entrusted them to my faith, the archbishop declared, and to them I owe my loyalty. I lay the sceptre and crown upon the holy altar. I neither refuse them nor give them to you, but by my authority I forbid any bishop to remove them or to consecrate you." Harold, now a wretched man, did not know what to do. He used threats, but they were of no use. He offered gifts, but gained nothing, for the archbishop could not be swayed by threats or bribed by riches. In the end, Harold left in despair, so bitter that he despised the archbishop's blessing and even turned away from the entire Christian faith. While others went to the church to hear mass, as was the Christian custom, Harold preferred to hunt in the woods with dogs or occupy himself with trivial matters, avoiding what he had come to hate. When the English people saw Harold's behaviour, they were filled with sorrow, but having chosen him as their king, they were too ashamed to reject him, and so they decided that he would remain as their king until the end. Exiled in Flanders, Queen Emma seethed with fury and sorrow, plotting relentlessly to reclaim the English throne for her son Harthacnut. The memory of her son Alfred's brutal murder at the hands of Harold Harefoot fueled her resolve. To blacken Harold's name, she commissioned the Iconium, a work designed to tarnish his reputation and enshrine her own legacy. The chronicles of the time echoed her contempt, with one stating, "Harold strayed far from the virtues of his father King Canute. He cared nothing for knighthood, courtesy or honour, only for his own selfish will." Emma whispered words of relentless ambition, and they soon stirred in her son's ears Harthacnut, the King of Denmark. Enraged by the death of his half-brother Alfred, Harthacnut began to gather his formidable Danish army, preparing for a war that would decide the fate of his father's empire. Harold, aware of the storm approaching, marshalled his own forces to defend England. The stage was set for a cataclysmic clash between the sons of Canute the Great, a battle that would determine the future of a fractured kingdom. Yet, as the drums of war would beat, fate intervened, and in the year 1040, as Harold gathered his lords for the defence of his realm, death claimed him suddenly at the tender age of 25. The cause of his demise remains shrouded in mystery, with whispers of a strange illness, or perhaps a more sinister end by poison. One tale tells of how Harold had claimed the lands of Sandwich for himself, inciting the anger of the monks of Christchurch. As he lay ill despairing in Oxford, the monks came to see him to settle the dispute. It is said that as they spoke, Harold's skin darkened ominously, a bizarre and haunting sight that led some to suspect foul play. His death, described in such eerie terms, has fueled speculation that the young king may have been slowly poisoned. In the end, Harold became yet another English king to meet an untimely end, a stark reminder that the English throne was the most dangerous seat in the realm. Upon the death of Harold Harefoot, his younger brother Canute, fueled by vengeance and a desire to reclaim what he deemed as rightfully his, marched into England and was crowned its king. In a grim act of retribution, Canute ordered Harold's body exhumed from its resting place. The corpse was dragged through the streets, beheaded, and its remains cast into a sewer. This brutal display was a punishment for the murder of his half-brother Alfred Atheling, and the mistreatment of his mother Emma, and the usurpation of the English throne. Canute sought to erase the very memory of Harold's reign, his desecration of Harold's tomb, a symbolic attempt to obliterate his brother's legacy. Yet, even in death, Harold's story did not end there. Fishermen later recovered the discarded body, and it is said that the Danes residing in London, moved by a sense of loyalty or perhaps pity, retrieved and reburied it in their local graveyard. Eventually, the remains were interred in a church in the city of Westminster, offering the fallen king a final if modest resting place. Harold Harefoot's reign was often overshadowed by the reign of his father, and his father before him. His story, like his body, was cast aside to be buried in the annals of history. Today, he remains one of England's most forgotten kings, his tale nearly erased from the collective memory, a shadow among the great figures of the past. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all soon for another history profile. Join the ranks of legends today and make history on the seas. Be sure to click the link in the description to not miss out on all the exciting new features.